The president just said this about the federal deficit.
This year, the deficit fell by $1.4 trillion, the largest one-year drop in American history, $1.4 trillion decline in the deficit.
Is that true? What does that even mean? Are we still in debt? Have we ever been in a surplus?
So many questions. Don't worry, I'm going to answer them. But first, I want to thank my TikTok subscribers for voting for this story for me to cover as a bonus this week. If you want to vote, you can subscribe to my TikTok page during my next live event. Now, before I tell you the answers, you have to understand our federal government runs on a fiscal year, meaning October through September. So is what the president just said true? Yes. According to the latest numbers from the Treasury Department, the federal deficit for fiscal year 2022 was just under $1.4 trillion. That's down more than 50% from 2021. It's important to understand a federal deficit happens when our government spends more than it brings in. So in this case, the federal government spent $1.4 trillion more in 2022 than it brought in. So are we still in debt? Absolutely. The national debt is different from the national deficit. The national debt is all the annual deficits combined plus interest owed. Do you want to know what the national debt is? Now keep in mind, this is a total over our country's history, and I need you to brace yourself because the federal debt is more than $31 trillion. Have we ever been in a surplus? Yes. In the last 50 years, the U.S. has actually run a federal surplus 5 different times. Most recently, we saw budget surpluses under then President Bill Clinton from fiscal years 1998 through fiscal year 2001, which started in 2020. You can see right there, $550 billion total in surplus. Now, for comparison, the largest federal deficit we've seen since the late 90s was clearly in the year 2020. You can see the federal deficit under then President Trump was $3.1 trillion. Now, keep in mind, that was the COVID year. That was the year the federal government gave out all those stimulus checks, all the PPP loans, all the money the government put out to keep the United States functioning while the rest of the world shut down. Then we saw another huge federal deficit year in fiscal year 2021, which again started in October under former President Trump and then ended in September under President Biden. But you can see another $2.8 trillion in federal deficit. So now that you understand how it works, you can see what the president is talking about right here in this chart. You can see that 50% plus reduction in federal deficit spending for fiscal year 2022. It's still a lot, but under President Biden fully for 2022 fiscal year, the federal deficit was just under $1.4 trillion.